Hello, I'm Amisila Pamela Ngubane, and this is the Entity Dynamics podcast. Entity Dynamics is a culture development consultancy where we believe that culture creates behavior and behavior creates reality. So, the title of this video is Why the Interest in the Horror Behind Horror Stories. Okay, so, as Michael Jackson said, we should heal the world and make it a better place. But if we're going to heal anything, we need to understand the root cause of the dis-ease or the malaise that we are confronted with. So there's a lot of horror stories, and I spoke about the more supernatural ones that we encounter in the media. But there's also the horror stories of human beings doing horrendous things to each other. Okay. And so why would you do this terrible stuff to each other? And there's all sorts of terrible stuff. There's terrible stuff that people do to each other on a one-on-one basis. There's terrible stuff that happens within family homes. There's terrible stuff that people do to each other as members of society. There's terrible stuff that the leaders of the political, economic, and social institutions do to the citizens who they are supposed to be taking care of. Okay. So there is all this horror that we see in the world, the wars, the poverty, the financial crashes that leave people homeless for no reason other than that banks are allowed to be greedy and exploit people, right? So Tupac Shakur, he had a tattoo on his abdomen written Thug Life, THUGLIFE, which was an acronym, and it stood for The Hate You Gave Little Infants effed everyone, right? So he was basically telling that to the system, you gave little infants hate, right? He's addressing the leaders, the structures and the institutions of the political, social, and economic institutions and systems that govern this world that we live in, especially in the westernized, globalized world. And when I say globalized world, I'm talking basically the world that's been created by various imperialistic forces, including imperialistic religions, okay, of which Christianity is one. So he's like, okay, also Islam is a imperialistic religion, okay, so is Judaism. Interestingly, these Abrahamic religions, they're very imperialistic. So he's saying the hate you gave little infants effed everyone. The world is screwed up because little infants were given hate. Now, how is a little infant given hate? Well, it's transmitted through the people who are supposed to be taking care of it when it's a baby, right? That's how a human is given hate, through the people who should be taking care of it. So one of the things I do is I watch a lot of videos on YouTube of psychologists dealing with emotional trauma. Okay. And one of the things that I have come to understand through watching these videos, and you know what, I want to do a video where I actually, or maybe some videos where I talk about these content creators, these psychologists and social workers and sociologists, philosophers who talk about these things, because I think it's very important that we have these resources and we access them regularly so that we can heal ourselves. And then as a result, through our healing, become, first of all, examples of healing to other people, but also become people who contribute positively to the consciousness space that we all inhabit and which we share. Okay. And, like I like to quote Christ, who says, "Blessed are the peacekeepers, for they will be called children of God." When you have inner peace, you will have outer peace. You will be able to interact with your fellow human beings peacefully and be able to manage potentially toxic interactions in an equipoised way. You're not going to be riled up. You're not going to feed the evil that's trying to elicit a reaction out of you. You won't feed their own sense of self unworth and their own sense of shame. You will leave it to be dealt with by them. And that's the only way people can heal, is when they deal with their issues themselves. Because a lot of the time what people will do, if they are unwell emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and they're refusing to deal with it because they feel ashamed of that feeling, they will try and project it onto someone else and make it seem like that you are the person with this issue, so that they don't have to look at themselves. And then in a way, it's like they're tricking themselves into believing that they're dealing with the issue by punishing you for an issue that they claim you have when you don't have it. Okay. So the issue of shame resonated with me very deeply when I came across it in these videos, because um, it is really something which is so debilitating to a human being. And then I also saw another graphic somewhere which was saying that shame is the lowest vibrational emotion that a person can feel. So if you're vibrating at the lowest level, you are not going to function in any sort of way that is positive for the humanity that you share this planet with, for the psychological consciousness space that you inhabit along with your fellow human beings and the fellow earthlings that we inhabit this planet with, right? You're going to be vibrating at a very low level. Now, Tupac is saying that this shame is basically the effery that we are dealing with. Okay, it's the crap we're dealing with. Okay, so if you look at the infants who have been given hate, right? They've been given it through people who should be taking care of them, because who else has access to an infant besides their caregivers? Okay, so what does this hate look like? Okay, it looks like things that induce shame in the child. And you know, when you're a baby, you feel things. You're very feeling. You're an emotional being, a consciousness being. You can feel things. This is why babies can actually, if a person, for example, can be put under hypnosis if they're exhibiting some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder. They can be put under hypnosis and regressed to the first moment they felt shame, they felt this trauma, they felt this sense of worthlessness, which is tied to the shame, right? Some of them have been shown to have experienced this negativity while they were still in their mother's womb. So maybe their mother was like deeply traumatized because she was being abused, or she was homeless, maybe she was a drug addict. You know, there's all sorts of different things that she could have been experiencing, which would lead her to be in a deep state of trauma. Because what happens when you're traumatized and stressed out is that your body releases hormones, fight or flight hormones, into your bloodstream, and the baby accesses those hormones too. But not just that, your baby will actually feel the feelings that you're feeling. That's why it's so important that pregnant women are in serene, calm spaces where they can relax for the well-being of their babies as well as themselves, right? So this baby in the uterus feels this intense stress. It becomes a being that is born in a state of fight or flight, okay? Or look at a situation where there's a baby, it's in a crib, it's crying because it's hungry, or its diaper needs to be changed. It doesn't get tended to for a while, and it's now feeling like, okay, I'm a baby. This is the soul, the being that is inhabiting this body of this baby, right? Because we're the same person that we were when we were born. It's not like we change just because our bodies get bigger and we're able to start talking and like our brain is developed. We're still the same soul. This soul knows that in the state of being a baby, that is when your consciousness knows, you know, your psychology knows that in the state of being a baby is when you should be the most lovable and in the state where people are most inclined to take care of you. But in this situation, this baby is being left to sit in its urine, in its poo, to be hungry, and no one is coming to take care of it. That being starts to believe that there must be something wrong with me if the people who should be taking care of me refuse to do so, even though I'm at my most lovable and at my most vulnerable. What's wrong with me? At that very early age, in infancy, this person starts to develop a sense of shame. They start to develop a pathological fear of rejection and abandonment, because in that state, this abandonment and this rejection is actually threatening its life, you know. So it internalizes a shame. I am so unlovable that my parents are willing to let me die. There's something wrong with me. But what is very important to understand is that that is not the truth of reality. So not only does shame make you feel worthless, it also distorts reality. It dissociates you from reality, because reality is no, it's not you. That's the problem. It's your parents who are dysfunctional and incapable of taking care of you. They should probably never have had children, you see. So shame causes you to really detach from reality, and that is a serious problem.